When you think of Africa, you probably think big, but you likely have no idea how big it actually is. Look at a standard map, and you might think Africa is roughly the size of North America. But the reality? You can fit the entire United States, China, India, and most of Europe inside Africa's borders, and still have room to spare. Despite its massive scale, 54 unique nations, and 1.4 billion people, Africa is still one of the most misunderstood places on Earth. From constant heat to the lack of technology tropes, we've been fed a narrative that is decades out of date. Today, we're shattering the stereotypes and setting the record straight. Here are the top 10 myths about Africa that are completely false. Number 10. Africa is a country. We've all heard it in movies, news clips, or casual conversation. I'm traveling to Africa. The African economy is growing. But here's the thing. As convenient as that phrasing is, it's fundamentally wrong. Today, we're busting the biggest myth on the map. The idea that Africa is a single monolithic country. Africa is a massive continent, not a country. It is home to 54 sovereign nations. To put that in perspective, that is more countries in Europe, North America, or South America. When you treat it like one place, you're lumping together the tech hubs of Nairobi with the ancient history of Cairo, and the bustling markets of Lagos with the serene landscapes of Namibia. It's not just about borders. It's about the people inside them. We're talking about over 2,000 distinct languages. Every time you cross a border, you aren't just changing time zones. You're entering a new legal system, a unique history, and a completely different culture. Thinking Africa is one country is like thinking Asia is just one giant neighborhood. It ignores the incredible complexity of over 1.4 billion people. Why does this distinction matter? Because when we generalize, we miss the nuances of success and the specific nature of challenges. So, next time you hear someone mention the country of Africa, be the one to set the record straight. Number 9. Wild animals are everywhere. The idea that wild animals roam freely across every corner of Africa is perhaps the most persistent Disney-fied illusion in modern travel lore. Transforming a diverse continent of 1.4 billion people into a 24/7 episode of Planet Earth. In reality, if you land at the airport in Lagos or Nairobi expecting a welcoming committee of giraffes, the only wildlife you'd actually encounter is a sea of frustrated commuters stuck in legendary gridlock. Africa is nearly 3 times the size of the United States, and while its national parks are vast, the wildlife is largely concentrated within protected borders, not wandering to the high-tech hubs of the Silicon Savannah or the fashion-forward streets of Johannesburg. This myth persists because we've been conditioned by high-definition documentaries to view the landscape as a crowded room, ignoring the fact that predators like leopards are masters of the ghost act, existing in a silent game of hide-and-seek where they hear your hiking boots coming from miles away. By clinging to the wild animals are everywhere trope, we inadvertently erase the reality of Africa's rapid urbanization and tech-driven future, treating a vibrant modern continent like a prehistoric theme park. The truth is, the wilderness is beautifully sparse and strategically hidden. The wild part of Africa are spectacular precisely because they aren't the whole story, leaving plenty of room for the city's cultures and people that truly define the land. Number 8. It's all one big jungle or desert. Close your eyes and think of Africa. Did you see a humid jungle? Or maybe a vast, empty desert? If that's all you see, you're missing about 80% of the story. Myth check. Africa is one big jungle. Reality? Tropical rainforests, mostly in the Congo Basin, make up only 10% of the continent. Most of that greenery people imagine is actually savanna, vast, open grasslands that look more like the setting of the Lion King than a dense jungle. And the desert? The Sahara is massive, sure, but it's not the whole picture. Africa has alpine tundras, Mediterranean forests, and even snow-capped peaks. In the Ethiopian highlands, it's often cool, rainy, and looks more like the Swiss Alps than a sun-scorched wasteland. But here's the biggest landscape people forget, the urban biome. Africa is home to some of the world's fastest-growing cities. We're talking skyscrapers, high-speed rail, and tech centers. It's not just wildlife, it's nightlife and innovation. Africa is 54 countries and thousands of ecosystems. So, stop thinking in 2 colors. The continent is a full-spectrum masterpiece. Myth number 7. Africa is technologically backward. Think about it this way. While the rest of the world was busy messing around with copper landlines and paper checks, Africa just skipped them. They call it leapfrogging. Take mobile money, for example. Way before Apple Pay was even a thing, Kenya was already running its economy through M-Pesa on basic flip phones. Fast forward to 2026, and nearly half of sub-Saharan Africa is banking entirely through their mobile devices. We aren't just talking about a few apps. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar fintech scene in places like Nigeria and Egypt that's minting tech unicorns at a record pace. But it's not all just software. In countries like Rwanda and Ghana, drones are the ones doing the heavy lifting. They're delivering life-saving blood and medical supplies to remote clinics in minutes. Work that would take hours over land. It's some of the most sophisticated autonomous logistics in the world. And it's happening daily while most of us are still just hoping our pizza shows up on time. Then there's the energy sector. Instead of waiting for massive, aging power grids to finally reach them, people are just going off-grid. There's a massive boom in decentralized solar right now. We're seeing millions of homes powering up with pay-as-you-go solar kits, turning the continent into a real-world testing ground for the future of green energy. Between AI-driven farming and the Silicon Savannah, Africa isn't trying to catch up to the West. It's setting the pace. So, the next time someone tells you the continent is lagging behind, tell them they're looking in the wrong direction. The future isn't coming. It's already being built in Lagos, Nairobi, and beyond. Number 6. All of Africa is poor. The idea that all of Africa is poor is one of the biggest myths still being pushed today, and it's completely wrong. By 2026, Africa isn't begging for relevance. It's building power. This isn't one country. It's 54 different economies, many of them growing faster than almost anywhere else on Earth. Places like Ethiopia and Rwanda are expanding at record speed, while cities like Johannesburg, Cairo, and Nairobi are becoming serious wealth hubs, home to tens of thousands of millionaires and a rising billionaire class. But here's the real story. Africa's growth isn't coming from aid. It's coming from people. Over 500 million Africans now make up a fast-growing middle class, with spending expected to hit over $2 trillion this year alone. That kind of money changes everything. Then there's trade. The African Continental Free Trade Area, the largest free trade zone in the world, is tearing down old colonial barriers and letting African countries finally trade and build with each other. Instead of exporting raw minerals, Africa is processing them at home. Instead of selling cheap resources, it's creating value. Massive projects like the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and industrial giants like Nigeria's Dangote refinery show what's happening right now, not someday. Yes, challenges still exist. But let's be clear, Africa in 2026 is not a continent of poverty. It's a continent of markets, industry, and ambition. And the world is only just starting to pay attention. Myth number 5. Africa lacks history before colonialism. The idea that Africa had no history before colonization was never a mistake. It was a strategy, a story designed to make conquest feel justified, to place an entire continent outside of history. But the truth is impossible to erase. Long before Europe's empires, Africa was home to civilizations of immense power, wealth, and knowledge. The Mali Empire sat at the center of the global economy. Its ruler, Mansa Musa, was so wealthy that his 14th century journey to Mecca released so much gold, it destabilized Egypt's economy for years. Farther south, the towering stone city of Great Zimbabwe rose. Engineered with such precision, it was built without mortar, yet still stands centuries later. In the east, the Aksumite Empire wasn't on the margins of history. It was one of the world's great powers, spoken of alongside Rome and China. And beyond empires, Africa was a continent of ideas, from advanced steel-making in Tanzania to the vast libraries of Timbuktu, where scholars studied astronomy, law, and medicine. This history was never lost. It was buried, Not because it didn't exist, but because it challenged the colonial narrative. Africa was never a dark continent. It was a foundational one. And the more we uncover, the clearer that truth becomes. Number 4, Africa is always hot. When people think about Africa, they usually imagine heat, endless sun, dry land, maybe deserts stretching forever. But here's the thing, that picture is only half the story. Because Africa isn't just hot, it's complex, it's massive, and in some places, it gets shockingly cold. Take Lesotho, for example. It's called a kingdom in the sky, and that name isn't poetic exaggeration. Every part of this country sits high above sea level, and up there, winter is real. Snow falls 5 to 10 times a year. Not a dusting, real snow. The kind that sticks. The kind that blankets the mountains and lingers for days on south-facing slopes. And the snow? It's not just scenery. It melts, flows, and feeds river systems that support millions of people across southern Africa. Quietly, reliably, year after year. Now travel north. The Atlas Mountains rise like a wall against the Atlantic. When storms hit them, they rise, cool, and release their weight. Snow, a lot of it. So much, in fact, that Morocco and Algeria have active ski cultures. Yes, skiing in North Africa. And in the city of Afrain, steep rooftops and alpine-style buildings aren't aesthetic choices. They're practical. They're built that way to survive heavy winter snowfall. Not exactly the image most people expect. Then there are the Rwenzori Mountains, often called the Mountains of the Moon. They sit on the border of Uganda and the DRC, right beside the Congo rainforest. And this is where things get surreal. Within just a few kilometers dense, humid jungle gives way to alpine tundra, permanent glaciers, just miles from one of the hottest, wettest forests on Earth. Few places on the planet shift this dramatically, this fast. Even Africa's deserts challenge everything we think we know. In the Sahara, in the Namib, the air holds almost no moisture. So when the sun sets, the heat escapes. Fast, temperatures drop. Sometimes all the way to freezing. Which means that in many parts of Africa, the heat people imagine lasts only 12 hours. Myth number 3. Africa is waiting to be saved. Africa is not waiting to be saved. That story is comfortable and completely wrong. In 2024, foreign aid to Africa dropped by 9%. Nothing collapsed, because Africa didn't need rescuing. In 2025, African startups raised over $3 billion. Here's the twist. Nearly a third of it came from inside the continent. That's not aid. That's ownership. Meet the AfCFTA, the largest free trade zone on Earth. 1.3 billion people. $3.4 trillion. This isn't paperwork. It's power in motion. While the West debates outdated banks, Africa runs the future of money. 70% of global mobile money transactions happen here. Quietly, efficiently, at scale. The green transition? It doesn't move without Africa. 70% of the world's cobalt and manganese lie beneath African soil. This time, leaders are saying the value stays here. Africa loses $90 billion a year to unfair financial systems. That's the real crisis. By 2050, 1 in 4 workers on Earth will be African. This continent isn't waiting for a hero. It's already leading. The only question is, are you paying attention? Number 2. Everyone speaks African. People still talk about the African language, as if an entire continent speaks with one voice. But that idea doesn't hold up. Africa isn't a country. It's a vast continent made up of more than 50 nations, each with its own history, culture, and way of speaking. And that matters, because across Africa, language is everywhere, and it's incredibly diverse. There are roughly 2,000 languages spoken on the continent. That's more than almost anywhere else on Earth. In many African communities, speaking more than one language isn't impressive. It's normal. A person might speak their mother tongue at home, use a regional language in daily life, and rely on an international language for school or government, sometimes all in the same day. Languages like English, French, and Arabic play important roles, especially in education and administration. Arabic is widely spoken across North and parts of East Africa. French is an official language in nearly 20 countries. But these languages didn't replace African languages. They exist alongside them. Regional languages like Swahili connect millions across East and Central Africa, crossing borders that came much later. These aren't dialects. They're full languages, shaped by centuries of history and lived experience. So no, there is no language called African. What exists instead is one of the most linguistically rich places on Earth, a continent that doesn't speak with one voice. Last but not least, Africa is dangerous and disease-ridden. There's an image of Africa that refuses to die, a place of danger, disease, endless crisis. But that image wasn't born from reality. It was built from headlines, fragments, and repetition. Because Africa is not one place. It is 54 countries spread across a continent so vast it covers more than 11 million square miles. Yet when something goes wrong in one corner, the world paints the whole continent with the same brush. That mistake even has a name: the country-continent error. Here's what you don't hear as often. Cities like Kigali, Rwanda are among the safest and cleanest on Earth. Quiet streets, order, stability, and the idea that Africa is disease-ridden, that ignores modern hospitals, skilled doctors, and global leadership in pandemic response. From Nairobi to Johannesburg to Casablanca, Africa is not defined by crisis. It's defined by stable democracies like Botswana, by rising tech hubs known as the Silicon Savannah, and by millions of people building normal, secure, forward-looking lives. So when you look past the old headlines, a different Africa comes into focus. Not a monolith of tragedy, but a continent of momentum, innovation, and quiet confidence. Africa isn't waiting to be understood. It already is, if you're willing to look. If this video challenged something you thought you knew, that's a good thing. Curiosity is where understanding begins. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who still believes the old stories. Because the real Africa doesn't need saving. It deserves to be seen.